You found the Backup Wrap-Up, your go-to podcast for all things backup, recovery, and cyber recovery. In this episode, we take a trip down memory lane with Dr. Mike Saylor, my co-author on learning ransomware response and recovery. We're talking about a brief history of ransomware, from the AIDS Trojan in 1989 to today's sophisticated double extortion attacks. You'll hear how ransomware has developed into a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise and what changes made that possible. To know where we are, we need to know how we got here. Let's listen to a brief history of ransomware. By the way, if you don't know my history, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and I've been passionate about backup and recovery for over 30 years, ever since I had to tell my boss that there were no backups of the production database that we just lost. I don't want that to happen to you, and that's why I do this. On this podcast, we turn unappreciated admins into cyber recovery heroes. This is the Backup Wrap-Up. Welcome to the Backup Wrap-Up. I'm your host, W. Curtis Preston, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Goldilocks persona, Molly Andy. How's it going?
It's been a while since I've heard that name. I'm good, Curtis. I'm good.
You clearly haven't been going out with our common friend enough.
Yes, I have not.
That likes to call you that name. Then we have the opposite of Goldilocks. We have over here...
No locks.
No, I like it. My co-author on the book, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery. How's it going?
It's going well, guys. Thanks for having me.
So this is going to be one of those episodes where, you know, the two guys with gray hair and the one guy with some gray hair, we're gonna be doing a little bit like back in the day, you know, when we talk about ransomware. I'll start, you know, we're talking about the evolution of ransomware, and I'll actually go back to my first memory of a ransomware incident. And it's actually my dad called me that a business partner of his had his computer encrypted, and they were asking for, it was, as I recall back in the day, like one Bitcoin was like it was under $500 or something, and it was under a number that if it went over that it triggered some laws or whatever. That's what I remember. And so he had this situation, and I remember asking if his friend, you know, had any backups of this computer that had been taken, and the answer was no. Right? He had, and of course, you know, I'm like, you're killing me, right? I hate it. I'm sure you have the same thing, Mike, when you know, we've talked about it in the past that you get most of your phone calls post facto, right? Like you know, it's like, I've been attacked, please help. And you're like, well, crap, did you have any defenses whatsoever? And the answer is no. You know, it's a lot better to do things in advance. But let's go back. A lot of people seem to think that the very first ransomware was this thing called the AIDS Trojan back in 1989. Do you agree with that?
That's kind of the first formal attack. There's probably others that, you know, somebody trying to do something and it turned out to be, you know, XYZ. But yeah, that's probably the first large ransomware attack.
Yeah. That sounds like a really long time ago, 1989. I mean, I was still in college. Persona.
I want to know how much data they
school.
actually, how much data was that back in the days? Because back then, wasn't like 100 megabytes a lot of data?
Well, yeah, this was like 1.5 megabytes per disk.
Oh, right, yeah, because it was on a floppy. It was actually Dr. Joseph Pop. And it didn't scale. There was no crypto, there was no internet, right? So it was very different than what we have today. And then there's the big growth era that you know, from the 80s to the mid 2000s. How do you think it sort of evolved past that initial idea?
Well, there are several kind of branches off of malware that happened during this period, probably closer to the 2000s. But I won't miss an opportunity to reference the late 1900s. The late 1900s was, was kind of the Wild West from a security perspective, because on the professional side, a lot of technology people, a lot of IT people, we were so focused on building and maintaining with really very little understanding of how bad guys are actually attacking us. Like, how did that actually happen? And then there was no end user training or awareness. It was just acceptable use. And you signed something when you started working here that you would use computers for evil, but people still did. I mean, I remember walking into a data center and there's a guy in there with a computer making satellite cards, clone satellite cards. He was selling them out the back door, like in the middle of the data center. And he's like, what? And it's like, well, you're not supposed to, one, it's illegal. And two, you're using company property to do that. But at the same time, bad guys were starting to realize that when you've got these low-end criminals, they're looking for the tools. Well, what if I infected the tool and then that got downloaded to the criminal and then it got dispersed through the criminal enterprise? And now I've got, it was like a multi-level marketing without the recruitment. And then you get into the 2000s and technology starts to evolve. Computers are getting, beefier and faster, and internet's getting faster, which is really what hindered a lot of bad guy activity in the day, is the dial-up. They're like, well, it can't do much. But now with the broadband and even fiber overseas, bad guys are doing a lot more because the capabilities there, the hardware, the horsepower, the bandwidth, it's all there. And then the tools are getting better. And really, they're just stealing from IT operations tools. The companies are putting out tools to help us do our real job better, manage a network, troubleshoot a network. And the bad guys are like, oh, those are great reconnaissance tools. Those are great deployment tools. If I can find the Microsoft server that disperses patches and I just put my malware on that, then I can disperse my malware. So
that's a consistent thing that I learned about with you with the book, is that consistently tools that have a good use, right, were then misused for
sure.
bad.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Does Cryptolocker fit into that? Because I know that was a big change. Or was Cryptolocker always a bad use tool?
I think just the name Cryptolocker, even if it was intended to be good, they should have picked a different name. It sounds bad, but no, it was always bad.
Yeah. I think maybe one of the tools you're thinking about, Curtis, that I've seen is I think, Mike, you probably know Cobalt Strike, I think is the one that's commonly used for deploying and detecting. But Mike, one other question. I know you talked about sort of computers getting beefier and faster, the internet and broadband. Is there also anything like that you saw around that time as companies started to produce more data, right? Everything started to sort of become online rather than having paper records and other things. Things start to become more collaborative in nature with the technologies and other pieces there that maybe might have started to lead to more ransomware attacks and other things like that.
And what's scary about really good bad guys is they do their analysis on how companies and their employees are using technology. So if you really look at and do an analysis like today of the average employee or computer user, and then you design your attack strategy around that, higher percentage of success. So taking your question back to the late 1900s, it was centralized computing, right? So it was client server. Maybe we had a dumb terminal, but all the data was centralized, and we could protect that. We could do better at protecting that. And then as hardware became more affordable, so now I can put a thick, what we call a thick client or a desktop, right? It's got a hard drive and everything I need, I can put it on your desk. Well, that became decentralized computing, because now, Bob in accounting is saving stuff on Bob in accounting's computer, not necessarily the server. And that was because network bandwidth. So we're using a token ring or old coax, and it takes forever to load that file when it's on the server. I'm just going to keep it here on my desktop, right? So it's not getting backed up probably, and it's not where it needs to be. Well, then bad guys doing that analysis are like, well, I'm going to stop attacking the network and the server. I'm going to start attacking these end user computers. And that's where a lot of these floppy drive and email driven attacks came from, is because bad guys understood that that's where the valuable stuff in the higher likelihood of success. All right. Well, now we've got laptops and mobile phones. Well, bad guys were like, well, I don't even have to attack the company anymore. I just need to figure out where this dude lives and hack his wireless or steal his phone out of his car, or, borrow his laptop, or, or infect the kid. The kids use their parents' computers too. So I just need to get the kid to go to a website to download some stuff. And so, there's any number of tactics and strategy once bad guys really understand how their targets use technology.
So I think what happened, there were two things that happened in the early 2000s, right? So we have the invention of Bitcoin, right, in 2008, and we have the invention of Cryptolocker in 2013. And do you want to explain how those two really together, I think, poured gas on this fire? Is that the analogy?
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. And boy, it became a fire. So Bitcoin and really any of that anonymizing technology that happened in the probably 2010 is when it probably got really popular. Well, I've mentioned in previous conversations that bad guys are kind of risk averse. These types of criminals are not the ones that are going to walk into a gas station to rob them at point blank, right, with a gun. That's not the kind of criminal they are. They sit behind a keyboard thinking, I'm protected or at least disconnected from this crime to some degree. So there's a mentality around that. And wow, now you're telling me I can get paid kind of anonymously and nobody can track it? And initially you couldn't. There wasn't real good understanding of even how this whole, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency worked, especially from getting law enforcement to understand that at the time. Good luck. And so bad guys were like, I'm going to start charging, holding ransom with Bitcoin, or, leveraging extortion, attacks with Bitcoin, and I can get paid and spend Bitcoin, with some level of anonymity. And so, yeah, that was probably one of the bigger advents of hacker or bad guy evolution that probably sparked a good spike in the.
And what role did Cryptolocker play in that?
So Cryptolocker was kind of the foundation for a lot of the attacks that bad guys are lazy. So I'm going to take this framework. I'm just going to tweak it. In a lot of cases, what we saw was attack A used, Cryptolocker plus maybe some other stuff. And it was hard coded with, my crypto wallet, all the financial, like you just need to click here and it pays, and it's all hard coded. All right. And then that developed a signature. So antivirus at the time, they didn't really have anti-malware back then, but so now there's a signature for that. But if I take that exact same payload and I just tweak it, and that tweak could just be changing the Bitcoin wallet and the email address, and I'm just going to use what you used and deploy it as my own, but now it's got its own signature. So I'm going to get past the antivirus for at least a week. But yeah, that became the foundation upon which an entire ransomware empire was built.
It's almost a little like script kiddies, right? Where you just take something, you copy it, you tweak it, you use it, but you don't really fully understand what's going on, or it's not anything unique from instance.
That was some of it, but then there were threat actors that built entire criminal enterprises around this. So I mean, and what I truly mean, they've got HR and marketing and sales and tech support, engineers, and I mean some of these groups are 50 plus employees. and they think they're doing a normal job. They just come to work and do accounting. They don't know where the money's necessarily come from, or maybe in some cases they're working for a criminal organization.
And then I think the next phase is when we start seeing nation states get involved, right? And we start seeing tools like WannaCry and NotPetya. You want to talk a little bit about that sort of era? And then I think right after that is sort of our current era. But what happened in that phase?
Well, probably starting about the same time that Bitcoin became popular. Pretty much every criminal enterprise, even drug cartels, white collar crime, espionage, all those started to see the value in understanding and conducting cyber crime as either as an alternate source of income, another thread of income, or a way of facilitating their other crimes, right? And so what we see in the evolution of that, and because a lot of organized crime is tied into state crime, nation state governments, and there really aren't very many that are excluded from this, but as organized crime gets more involved with cybercrime, the nation states also become more interested, and a lot of those suspect nation states, they conduct their own cyber crime, illegitimate campaigns as well. And well,
for reasons, is it for reasons other than state interests, or is it just like, is it, you understand
chaos.
What I'm saying, right? Are they doing this to further the aims of the country, or is this just money?
Well, sometimes and this goes into geopolitics. So country A may affect a cyber incident in country B for the benefit of country D, so that it somehow manipulates a relationship with country D over maybe a deal or some other political thing. So, I mean, it's just another strategy in their chess game.
But is this any different though, Mike, than previously? Like, I'm sure even before this time period that we're talking about, there were probably nation states that were attacking other nation states at a technology level. And so is what really changed here is it became more prevalent and more destructive, I would say, and more open.
So destructive is just that's an outcome. So, and that depends on the campaign. A lot of cyber from a nation state perspective is all intelligence gathering. And so with intelligence, the moment you take action on it, you lose that. It's no longer intelligence, right? And if you affect damage while you're collecting intelligence, then you're cut off from future collection. Now there are always opportunities to determine, well, there's no future value in this, so now I can be destructive, and we saw that with the Iranian centrifuges back in the day, but for sure, nation states have always looked for ways of collecting intelligence and cyber crime, and cyber crime through organized crime. It's been a significant evolution of that. An example, so in the U.S., we got pretty good at identifying nation state attacks from China. And so as an IT practitioner, I can go, well, that looks like traffic from China. We're not gonna allow that. So we develop firewall rules. We block traffic. We don't buy hardware from China. We don't subscribe to software from China, right? So we're getting better at that. Well, then what China did was hire a bunch of domestic organized crime, gangs and bad guys, and they taught those guys how to be hackers, and they funded them and gave them tools. And now they're attacking us domestically, and well, we can't block everything domestically, so our effectiveness has gone down. And then if you look at, North Korea actually getting people hired within an organization, well, now you've given them access. They don't have to hack or do, they're sitting at a desk with access you gave them. And so now they're a true insider threat. All of that is up.
Yeah.
And now they can deploy ransomware from their desk and then just walk out and hop on a plane and go home. Right. So
you touched on something there, Mike, that comes up. It's come up a lot on the pod, and that is this idea of the insider threat, right? And I talk a lot about insider threats, both from a rogue admin who is just pissed off, or he's financially incentivized to do something, or like in this case, you're talking about literally they are a plant. And I've had at least a handful of people who suggest that I'm crying wolf, that I'm exaggerating, that this is just the boogeyman, and it's just I use it as a way to scare people into doing good backups. What do you think about that?
It's not the boogeyman, and I think it happens more often than we hear about. I think one of the most recent significant ones I've heard about is I can't remember if it was SpaceX or Tesla, but it was one of Elon Musk's companies. Bad guys actually propositioned an employee to help them deploy malware in that environment in exchange for a percentage of the ransom. Well, that's huge. And there are any number of ways to identify that target. It's no different than intelligence targeting. If I'm going to go to some foreign country and try to get an important person to become an asset for me to be a double agent or an agent of mine, I'm going to do homework. And we've done this to some degree in our services out to clients when we try to determine the effectiveness of security training for employees. If I'm going to target a facility, maybe I do some open source intelligence of all the employees that work there, and I find the one that's getting divorced, he's got bad credit, maybe he had an accident recently, he's got some medical bills. Well, I'm going to offer that guy some money in exchange for helping me out. And I can tell you 100% of the time that we've done that, they've accepted the money.
Interesting. Yeah, it again it reminds me when I worked at the bank back in the 80s. No, I guess technically that was the early 90s, not in the 80s. In the 80s, I was still in high school. But we would do, employee orientation and regular cyber training, early cyber training. It wasn't really cyber training, just information security training, right? And one of the things that we consistently told people repeatedly, no one from us will ever call you and ask you for your password, right? And if it is, it's a bad guy, right? And then we would next week call them and ask them for their password. And the percentage of people that would give us their password was way higher than we would have liked.
My favorite one was I walked around an environment and I went to FedEx Kinko's and I printed out some little postcards that said, update, it had some graphics on it. Update, our new help desk phone number is, whatever this phone number is. Call us with any tech support needs, or, the printer needs paper or whatever. Here's the new phone number.
Uh-huh.
And we piggybacked into an environment and we put those postcards on everybody's desk. The very next day we called them and said, hey, this is Mike from tech support. We're having issues with your account. I need you to reset your password. And I can help you with that over the phone. I'm not giving you that. So that was one. Well, then we did have some people calling us. And when they called us, we would ask for their credentials. They're like, I was told not to give you that. And we're like, hey, you called us. You called me.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to game that.
Yeah. So let's talk about sort of where we are now. And I think there's sort of two big things, right? Which we talk about: ransomware as a service, which, RAS, RAAS, right? And you want to talk about that. And then also what double extortion is and how that's become kind of the SOP at this point.
Yeah, so ransomware as a service is just a business. So it's like a franchise. And so you can buy into ransomware as a service as an entrepreneur. You don't really have to be technical at all. You just have to be careful that, you're not, the first time you get a good check, you're not buying flashy cars and a brand new house while you're on unemployment. So there's the ransomware as a service, bad guys set that up so that they just get a piece of it. But really it's you taking all the risk and getting the money. So anybody can.
Let me ask you, make sure. Go ahead. Well, go ahead, Persona.
But why, Mike, just that last sentence you said, right, where it's the bad guys take a cut, but you take on all the risk. How is, like, I'm assuming that the ransomware as a service guys offer the service. They have all the infrastructure. They have all the connections. They are doing everything. Why is it you as the entrepreneur who ends up taking that
So
risk?
the way that works is, let's give a real world example. So let's say you want to start a lemonade stand, but you don't know how to make lemonade or build a stand. So
are you sure you want to get into lemonade business?
Or you don't know what
so
water
Curtis
is.
has a lemonade stand as a service. So I paid Curtis $10,000 and Curtis builds me a lemonade stand and makes me a lemonade and sets up a bank account for me and puts it all out at the curb and says, good luck. And then he's done. He washes his hands of it. He's made his money. He made his 10 grand. Whatever you make off of your lemonade stand is all yours, but it's all connected to you. You're standing there. It's your bank account, right? And so everything after Curtis setting all that up for you, it's all on you.
But isn't ransomware as a service, sorry, just walking through what you had said, but they still have all the infrastructure, everything else that
They
they're
set
running
it all
and
up for you.
operating.
They rent.
Oh, okay. And then they hands off and they're done.
I'm really glad you because I just assumed that when you did ransomware as a service, so you're saying they're literally setting up a ransomware system for
command and control
to use,
configuring the ransomware, talking to you about how you want this to work. Do you want it just to infect and encrypt and pray that they pay the ransom? Do you want double extortion with a website set up? There's all these different packages that you could buy. Some of them come with postcards.
So,
but
that's actually now. I'm actually really. I had always assumed it was different. I thought
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. So this really is very similar to, I'm going to say, Microsoft 365. So they set this thing up for you. Then what you do with it is up to you, right? They know how to set it up. They know how to configure it and put it together. But then you're going to use it to do bad things.
To a degree. I mean, you don't typically interact with it after. So they're going to set it up. They're going to populate the tool with 1 million email addresses or a target list. They're going to design the payload. They're going to help you set up your Bitcoin wallet. They're going to rent the server, and they're going to tell you when and how to push the button. And that's it. You don't get in there and change anything. You're not logging into anything. You're just sitting back, looking at your Bitcoin wallet to see when money hits. That's it.
And what are you providing? Are you literally just giving them money, or are you saying, hey, here's a list of people
fundamentally it's just money, but you can work with them to customize your attack. Could be a former employer, but that hasn't disabled your access yet, because that happens a lot. It could be some political group that you don't like. It could be a whole country. It could be a whole industry. Or you could just say, I'm leaving it up to you guys as the expert to target whoever you think is going to make me some money.
But then all the infrastructure that's spun up, all the setup, that's sort of, you own it at that point.
You own it, but you really don't touch it. Well,
yeah, exactly. Okay.
It's all tied to your Bitcoin wallet. And
it's almost
that's why you say, because it's tied to your Bitcoin wallet, that's why you say you're taking the risk. Yep. So if somebody figures out,
so they know how to cover their tracks.
Bitcoin
they're gonna rent a server that accesses another rental server, that accesses another rent server to help set up your command and control server, which is also rented. And all those things only have a life of 72 hours to a week, and that's how long you're paying for. However much money you pay in is, gives you a period of time to collect as much money as you can.
So they're more like
Go ahead.
They're more like infrastructure expertise.
Yep. Because they know how to, and it's all, it's all virtual infrastructure. Yep.
Yeah.
And what percentage of, do you think, modern attacks are using that type of idea versus just running your own stuff?
I'm gonna create some buckets again. So one bucket is the entrepreneur that's doing ransomware as a service as business, and the other bucket is other criminal actors that are using ransomware as a service as a component of their criminal enterprise. So you've got real criminals that are doing other stuff, and nation state actors are good at this because they'll use ransomware infections as a distraction, right? So I'm going to infect a Department of Defense contractor with ransomware if I can. And while they're focusing on covering from this ransomware, we're going to do this other attack. So they don't really care about the ransomware or if you pay a ransom or not. They're just using it so that you're not focused on something else. That denial of service attacks were used that way in the past.
No, there were two buckets.
The bucket one was the entrepreneur, and bucket two is
got it.
Sophisticated threat actor that's using it as a.
In terms of number of attacks or percentages of attacks, how do you see that splitting between those two categories?
The entrepreneur is much smaller. Very few and far between of people that just want to push a button and make some money. Because if you understood the risk.
For the record, I want to push a button and make some money, but I just don't want to. I don't want to break crimes, or I don't want to do crimes while I'm doing that. Anyway, so let's talk about what double extortion is and why did it happen in the first place, and then what does it mean to a victim?
So the double extortion tactics started to evolve as more and more victims stopped paying the ransom or stopped communicating with the threat actor to begin with. So there are some threat actors that your ransomware note says you have 2 days to reach out to us before we post your information on our wall of shame or whatever. So you've got a couple of days to go, hey, I realize you got me. What's next? And then you can draw that out, and a negotiator will help you draw that out so you figure out what to do and have some time to respond. But in the evolution of ransomware in this particular crime, a lot of people were like, so what, you encrypted my computer, I've got a backup, or it wasn't anything important, so I don't care. Well, now you might get a subsequent email that says, but I got all your photos of you and your girlfriend, or photos of, you on that vacation with somebody else, or whatever else I can do to try and, turn the screws to try and get you to pay something. So maybe it was $1,000 ransom and you weren't going to pay that, but will you pay, $300 so I don't release this data? And that's actually gotten worse too, because now I can use AI to manipulate photos I took from your computer to make it look like anything. And so that's, unfortunately, that's kind of what's been going on with kids, thinking their life is over because someone got some manipulated picture of them. But that's where it started. I'm not going to pay the ransom. Oh, well, will you pay me something so that I don't release this information to the public?
Do you know if bad actors have some sort of automation or tools? Because I'm sure there are these huge troves of data that they've exfiltrated from all these various victims, and to go through it piece by piece may be complicated and time consuming. And so are you aware of any tools or other things to sort of sort, filter, flag?
Well, AI for sure will do that today, but in the past, they were just scripts, like, using Python or PowerShell, or even before PowerShell, like some C+ scripts. And you make a good point. And sometimes that double extortion is flipped. So they will, in some cases, exfil data to determine whether or not you're even a valuable target, right? And then encrypt you, and then determine data they've got of any value. But walking through that phase at a time, and this, we talked about the 5 phases in another episode, but when they exfil data, when it calls home and says, here was what I found, to your point, if they found a lot, it could take some time. And we did an incident response once where it was a company that does surveys, right? So you sign up and say, I want to do surveys. And for your surveys you do, you earn points. And then with points you earn, you can buy gift cards and things like that. So that's your participation in the survey thing. Well, so bad guys were able to compromise the laptop of a marketing person that worked for the survey company. Marketing person's job is to go out to big companies like Pepsi and Coke and Frito-Lay and go, hey, we can do surveys to help you develop your new product or change your marketing or your advertising or the way that product looks. And so when I do that, the company says, great, I want to participate. Well, here's an FTP site where you to upload your marketing material. And then we take that and embed it in surveys. And then those surveys go out to 1 million people. Bad guy compromised marketing guy's laptop, and he maintained access to that for almost 7 months, a little over 6 months.
Ooh.
Until he understood what he had access to. Well, then, given what he understood, he crafted his attack by using laptops' access to the FTP site, waiting for, let's just say Pepsi, to upload graphics and files, and then infecting those files so that they went and got embedded in 1 million surveys. And then so yeah,
crazy.
So it all depends on the threat actor, the target, the victim, and the data and even we call it business process compromise. So the bad guys are in your environment enough, or in your system enough to understand how things work and the value of access that you've given them. So they've compromised your process in order to inject themselves into that process for the success of their attack.
Like if these people weren't evil, I'd be like, they sound amazing, because half the time people in companies don't understand their own business processes.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have these criminals tearing it apart. And
Now, granted, I mean, if you were able to work from home in your underwear and eat pizza, kick back in your lazy chair, and your laptop's in your lap, and you're just like, you know what, I'm going to take a nap. I may work a little later. I'll work tonight. I'll work tomorrow. And the incentive is I made $1 million, right? So that's why their incentives, their mentality is a lot different than your traditional employee.
So about this final phase here, where there is a significant amount of exfiltration happening and then double extortion, what do you think about comments that I think we got some of them when we were tech editing the book, and I get them occasionally online, and that is, well, since most of the ransomware attacks now have exfiltration as part of it, what's even the point of having a good backup and DR system if you're ultimately going to end up paying the ransom anyway because of double extortion? What do you think about that idea?
I think it's probably the wrong mindset to start with. If you don't have good backups and you get ransomware, regardless of the bad guys steal your data or not, you're not able to continue your business. Without good backups, right, there are solid statistics over the last several years of how many businesses fail because they can't recover from a ransomware because they don't have good backups. And it's not just recovering to operations, it's recovering from all the legal stuff too. So depending on your organization and the data that they got, you could get sued out of existence. You could get regulated out of existence. You could lose that contract. You could lose your ability to do business in a state or with a particular vendor. So, I mean, that's huge. You've got to do your own risk analysis and know yourself in order to make that determination. But I will say that there's a lot of different approaches to protecting your data. So segmentation, encryption, because if bad guys steal your data and it's encrypted, they're not going to spend a whole lot of time trying. They're lazy, remember? Right. So they're like, I'll run some tools that I've got to see if I can get through it, but they're not going to spend they're not going to buy new tools or invest in a whole lot to try and break it.
Unless they know it's valuable, like your last pass.
Let's move on to the next thing. Yeah. But for sure, an organization truly needs to understand the value of their data, where their data is, the impact it's going to have if it is compromised, And you've got to take that approach these days because it's going to happen. So you need to plan for how are we going to respond when it does happen. And that's a lot of what our book talked about. It's not about some hypothetical situation. It's going to happen.
Right. And ransomware, ransomware attacks are literally one of the reasons why you need a backup and DR system. All the other reasons are still there, right? We just need to add, there was an entire chapter in the book about how to defend the backup system from cyber attacks, right? And it's actually relatively easy. It's easier than defending the primary thing, because really all we have to do is just make sure they can't delete it, right? There are other things we want to do, but the thing we have to do is we have to make sure that the backups are immutable, that they can't attack them, right? So there's really not too much that you need to do a backup system that you shouldn't have been doing already. I just think that cyber attacks in general they're making a lot of us just do the things that we were supposed to do. It's sort of like when there was COVID and people were washing their hands, right? Well, were you supposed to do that anyway?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't wear a helmet riding my bike until I bumped my head pretty good.
Yeah. I used to, when I was a kid, I rode my bike a lot. And I remember one time, right, and nobody wore helmets, but we didn't know what a helmet was back then. And I remember being on the sidewalk, there was this big box, I'm talking like a 3x3 foot box that was blocking the sidewalk. And I, in my infinite wisdom, said, I'm going to blast through this thing because it's a cardboard box. That did not work out as I had planned.
Did you not think there's a reason that someone has a cardboard box in the middle of the sidewalk?
The 13-year-old Curtis clearly did not. And that thing of when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Yeah.
What was in the box?
I went a whole bunch of stuff. All I know is the box did not move. I went flying over the box, and I did not have a helmet. So, anyway, don't be Curtis. The little stick figures. Curtis is the thing. Don't be Curtis. Yeah, that's the lesson from today's. All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for another great episode.
Anytime. Look forward to the next one.
All right. And thanks, Prasanna, again, always with the good questions.
For what? I did nothing.
Your aura.
Good. Aura. All right. That is a wrap. The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links for my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.